There's something called learning from the past, which is very valuable and very important, and there's nothing in the world wrong with it. You do something, you behave towards someone in a way that you don't like, you've done something that is inappropriate, you've made a mistake, you've dropped the ball in some way, and what you say to yourself, instead of, oh, I'm so terrible and I'm so awful and I'm just such a bad person, which is instantly putting a label on yourself and immobilizing you and keeping you from growing and learning from it, what you can say instead is, I am going to work even harder in this day at not behaving in those ways. And these are the things that I'm going to do. But most people don't do that. Instead, they accept guilt. And the guilt that they accept is, I am not worthy. And this is the reason that they adopt this kind of a strategy, is because they've been taught this since the time that they were little boys and little girls. You can literally make anybody do anything that you want through guilt. And guilt is a trap. And it's a useless emotion, because being immobilized now about something that has already happened is, when you think about it, a pretty silly and wasteful thing to do. The now is here. Everything that happened in your life happened. You can never should have done it. You can never would have done it. You can never could have done it any differently than it happened. And knowing that all of the things that you've done in your life are over, then if they're over in the physical reality, then in your mind is the only place that you have anything left over, since the physical reality is just now. Now is all there is and all there ever is. It's the working unit of your life. So everything that has transpired in the past, since it's over, the only thing that's left over is how you're choosing to process it. If you process it in a way that makes you feel guilty, then that will immobilize you. That will make your life unhappy. That will keep you from being fulfilled in the present moments of your life. So what you want to do, instead of processing events and things that you've done that you've chosen to feel guilty over, is to say, instead I'm going to shift that to, how can I learn from these? What's the lesson in this? What did I have to learn? I have a belief that life gives exams. And if you don't pass the exams, you just keep repeating them over and over and over again. And a lot of people use this guilt trip. Their whole life becomes this enormous trip of guilt. Always feeling bad about what they've done and why they did it. Always putting themselves down and finding fault with who they are. Always rejecting themselves because they didn't perform to somebody else's expectations, or they didn't do things the way they were supposed to do them, and so on. So guilt plays a big role in people's lives. It plays a role in our culture. Okay, I'd like to just review a couple of strategies here for getting rid of guilt. First is to begin to view the past as something that can never be changed. That's very important. It's over. And your feeling guilty isn't going to change the past, nor will it make me a better person. Now, if you were in a society or in a culture in which, by feeling bad about what happened in the past, it would change it, I would be here making a tape in favor of guilt. Like if right now you could feel guilty about the outcome of the Peloponnesian War, and how terrible the outcome was, and how awful the Athenians were treated, and so on. And then if I said to you, well, will that change the outcome of the war? You would say, well, of course not. It's over. Well, this morning is just as over as the Peloponnesian War. And your feeling guilty about what happened this morning is just, in terms of changing what happened, makes just as much sense as feeling guilty about the outcome of the Peloponnesian War. It isn't going to change the outcome at all. So instead of being focused on things that are not going to change the outcome, what you want to do is be focused on how you can, in fact, change the outcome in the future. And guilt keeps you from changing the outcome in the future. That's what you have to understand about guilt. Guilt, like everything else in your life, transpires now, in this moment. This is when it's happening. And instead of, if you can look at and process it this way and say, instead of feeling guilty in this moment, what could I be doing otherwise? And that's the big payoff for guilt. Guilt keeps you from doing something about it. That's why I call it a useless emotion, because it keeps you hung up on the past in the present, which is all you have. And if you use up your present to be hung up on the past, then you can't use your present to do something constructive now. So it's a very useful technique emotionally for people to employ to keep themselves from taking risks, from trying new things, from moving on in their life. You should ask yourself what you're avoiding in the present. And ask that question. Instead of feeling guilty right now, what could I be doing? And then begin to accept certain things about yourself as who you are. Then if your parents or your boss or your spouse or somebody doesn't like something that you've done or whatever, instead of feeling guilty about it, you say, this is who I am. These are the choices that I make. Yes, I'm a person who dresses this way. And if somebody else doesn't like it, like if it's a relative or whatever, and they don't like it, this is still who I am. And even though I'm not going to rub it in anybody else's face, I am not going to choose guilt when they respond negatively to who I am, to how I dress, to what I say, to the language that I use, to the people that I go out with, to the car that I drive, to the job that I have, to whatever it is. It's endless. There's always going to be people out there who aren't going to like it. But if you feel guilty about that, then you're giving them control of your life. And you can simply say things like, I understand that you don't approve of that. I understand you don't like that. This is who I am. This is what I've chosen. And begin to see that you start to feel good about that. It is something that makes you feel strong. And you begin, and people always like strength, not weakness. And that's true about ourselves as well. We like ourselves when we're strong, when we resist an addiction, when we resist doing something that we know is self-defeating. When we stand up to someone that is difficult for us to stand up to, even though it may be painful at the moment, we like ourselves better when we do that. And that's what you have to do. You have to teach people who use guilt on you that it no longer applies in your life.